Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today I'm reviewing Codenames, Codenames Pictures, and Codenames Duet. Despite the box for Codenames not actually being on the table because I have some of these stored together, but I'm going to be reviewing Codenames, Codenames Pictures, and Codenames Duet. This is part of my quest to review all the games in my top 100 games of all time, and Codenames has been featured in my top 100 every single year that I've done it because, frankly, Codenames is an amazing game. So there you have it. There's the review. If you're just looking for an opinion, Codenames is great. You should go ahead and get it. If you do want more information about the game itself, whether it may or may not appeal to your personal taste, and you want to see about how it's played and what I think of the different versions, why I like it, all of that, well, let's go ahead and get into it, starting with the basic version of Codenames. The basic version of Codenames is ultimately a game where you're going to have two teams of players who are trying to look at these cards over here on the table, and there are hundreds of cards and words in the game, but you're looking at the cards on the table and you're trying to figure out how to pair them up based on your specific code card. This code card is going to be shared by the two people who are giving the clues. So for example, in a regular game of Codenames, I'll have myself and someone else next to me will be looking at this card, the other team can't see it, and we can see the designation of whose cards are whose. So for example, if I'm on the red team, I know that berry, nut, and Africa are mine, whereas the blue team knows that chest and vet are theirs, and none of us want to touch spider with a 10-foot pole because that would instantly mean we lose. Because the general idea is you're giving clues. You're going to give clues to your teammates because let's assume for Codenames you have a minimum of 4 players, so I have my own team, which is me plus the players I'm giving clues to. Then we have my other person giving clues, they're the team captain, and they're giving clues to their team. And over here, I'm going to say a word. And again, let's go ahead and the fact that I have berry, nut, Africa, I have sound, I have mammoth, cell, check, and I have chair and pilot. And let's go with, I don't even know the most basic looks, just looking across the board over here, let's just say with something very basic, let's go with food 3. Okay, if I say food 3, because the way you give a clue in Codenames is you give a single word followed by a number. The word is your clue. The number is how many cards you think that will relate to if your teammate's looking at it and trying to guess. So offhand, your teammate goes ahead, they look at the board, they don't know what's behind this card, but they know that you just said food and 3. And so they look at the cards over here, and they have foot, not a food. Berry could be a food. Himalayas, no. Spine, no. Chest, no. Chair, pilot, point, no. Nuts, a food. So that seems like a possible answer. Africa, no. Nail, root. Root beer. Root beer could be a food. I don't know. Needle, web, London, vet, cell, spider, war, capital, sound, Germany, China, mammoth, check. I don't know. Let's go with berry. So they go ahead and guess berry, and I go ahead, yes, you are correct. And I mark that they got that clue correctly. They say nut, and I go, yes, you are correct. And then they go ahead the next clue, and they go with, what's the next thing? They go with root. And unfortunately, I have to acknowledge that they are, well, just gave the other team their own guess. Basically, this card goes on that, and now the other team has a clue in their favor. They just got a point without even having to work for it. Little did they know that I was going for mammoth. For whatever reason in my head, I'm thinking cavemen, they hunt mammoths for food, woolly mammoths, all that stuff. That's what I'm going with in my head, but they may not have made that connection. Because the whole premise of the game is you're trying to work with a set of cards that work together, trying to come up with words that connect and words that don't connect to other cards on the table. Keep in mind, spider was the death card, the assassin card over here. This word spider, because of the designation on this grid over here, if any team gets their clue guessers to guess spider, you instantly lose. There is no counting of points, you instantly lose the game. Otherwise, whoever gets rid of their guesses first, whoever successfully gets all of their color, either team red or team blue, that player wins. Whenever you guess the opposing team or a neutral card, then you stop guessing. So for example, in that example, had they gone with, let's say they had gone with food or a berry, let's say they had gone with berry, and then they had gone with root before nut, then as soon as they had guessed root, I would have immediately said, no, I'm sorry, it's not our card, and then the turn is over. And that's true for a neutral card as well. Had they gone for war, because doing war you need food, I'd mark it off right away and be like, nope, the guessing is done. In general, you can keep guessing as long as you are correct, but you're done guessing as soon as you're incorrect. So you want to go with the things that make more sense to you first. Then it becomes Blue's team. Blue's looking at this grid over here. They're looking at Himalayas and point and chest over here and vet, and none of these things work for me cohesively in a clue. We have nail and capital in Germany, and we have capital in Germany. Is Frankfurt the capital of Germany? I'm not even sure, but let's go with Frankfurt 2. Okay, just for the sake of not making you sit here and watch me as I struggle to come up with good clues under a time clock, let's go with Frankfurt 2. I hope Frankfurt's the capital of Germany. I don't actually know. Is Berlin? Berlin's the capital of Germany? My rural geography is taking a beating in this video, but whatever it is, you get the idea. You're trying to give a clue to your teammates to get them to guess the words. That's the basic premise of how Codenames operates. Then Kind of think if we wanted to do a review first and then the versions. Let's do the review first. Let's start with the review. Now that you know basically how to play, you go back and forth, you try to get the team to guess the clues. There are some small additional rules to be mindful of if you miss clues some rounds. So for example, over here, I know that if he said food 3 and I only got this one over here, I know that there are 2 more cards that relate to food. On future rounds, you always have +1 guess, meaning if I say food 3, you're actually allowed to guess up to 4 times, assuming they're all correct. And to that end, sometimes you're going to sit there and go into a round knowing that you're like, oh, nuts of food. I missed nut. That's obviously it. And you may well start off next round with going with nut because you're trying to play off of last round's clue. It doesn't matter how you got to the word. At the end of the day, if the word is correct, if the guess you make is the team's color, then you go ahead and get the point and may continue guessing. Which brings us to a review of Codenames. We'll talk about the other versions soon in the video over here. But starting off the review over here, Codenames is just a fantastically clever game. The game basically combines the joy of a party game, the sense of fun and jokes and trying to come up with a clue and then watching other players play off it and watching other players look at there and be like, you know, I don't know, food, Africa, maybe Africa over here, they need more food, maybe that could be the reason over here. Maybe we talk about the mammoth because mammoth, woolly mammoth, maybe they even get that. Maybe they're just trying to connect all these other things. Spiders eat food, spiders could be food, they have flies, maybe spider. You watch the players trying to come up with different combinations, trying to trace back the entire table to the word that you came up with, and the whole thing results in an atmosphere of strategy and hilarity that gives you a nice combination of a party game and a strategy game baked into one. The game is sheer genius in terms of what it does, but also the variety of the system. One thing that many party games in this genre tend to not do as well at is the longevity of the system. When you're operating with a single word premise, when you're operating with a single clue related to a single card, then eventually you go through cycles, you play the game, you've done apples to apples, you've done taboo, you've played through the systems, and it's not as interesting or clever because, okay, great, you go through the taboo card, you figure out how to make those clues work. Whereas when you play through Codenames, it's never about any individual one clue. The fact that Himalayas is on the table makes no difference to the fact that the last time you used a clue to get the Himalayas, because last time you had Himalayas and mountain in play, and this time you have Himalayas on its own, and that totally changes the way you're going to interact with the clue. The table is all about the combination of your cards, your clues, your other team's clues, what the death card is, and that combination of 25 cards, the distribution of all those factors is going to determine how you engage with any single clue, including calculating the likelihood of failure. If you know that there's 5 words on the table that are a great match for, let's just say game, okay, for a game. If you say game 5, there's 5 words that are a great match, but there's 1 word that isn't. Well, the way you approach that clue is going to change. If that 1 word is the assassin card, you should still stay you should still stay far away from the word game. If Monopoly is the assassin card and game is going to connect you to 5 of your words, but also Monopoly, well, you might lose. Versus if it's a neutral card, fine, maybe they guess Monopoly, but at least once Monopoly's out of the way, they can now go ahead and continue to get your clues. And so that changes the way you impact the game. Everything about the combination of the 25 cards on the table just gives you a delightful strategy game that is near infinitely variable. There's no upper limit on how ambitious you can be as you guess in this game. You can try to connect 1 word with 1 clue, which generally will get you a round of shame in the game, like a little bit of a silent disapproval from your teammates when you go with, let's go with spider, I was going to say spider 1 for web, but there's spider on the table. You see, this is the problem I'm talking about. If you go with doctor 1, and somebody guesses vet over here, which honestly could be vet, but there's also needle, so really not great clues right now at the moment, but that's because I'm running under pressure over here. But effectively, the clues you give can go so as little as 1 card can be connected, but as many as your entire table. I have gotten 5 clue words. I have gotten 6 clue words, and it's such a satisfying moment when you have that happen. The lack of an upper limit, the combination of party and strategy, the near infinite variability, the general cleverness of the system is just a party game that works. Ever since this game came out, designed by Vladish Vadil, put out by CGE, ever since this game came out, it has been my go-to party game, and that has not changed since the game came out. As far as things I don't like about the game, nothing really. I mean, once in a while, you end up with a combination of 2 words that you just can't connect. You've gotten your other words out of the way, and you're down to just 2 words left, and the 2 things you have left on the table, you have, I don't even know over here, you have sell and nail. I'm sure you can find a way to connect them. Maybe, I don't know. Honestly, a file would probably work because you use a file, you smuggle them into prison in a cell, and you connect with nail. You can find that combination. But there are times you just sit there and struggle to try to connect 2 words, and you just can't. And so sometimes there can be a degree of either just a frustration around that, or the downtime that can be present as players sit there and try to think through their clues, there can be downtime present as players try to come up with that perfect combination. And there is a timer in the box if you want to use it. I personally don't. I find it takes away from the overall experience. But then again, so does the infinite downtime when somebody is just not coming up with anything. As far as I can see others not liking, again, the potentially bad combos, the pressure of being in sync with your team, of trying to get into somebody else's head, because it all seems great on paper when you're trying to connect two words and you do so with like fruit and there's apple and banana on the table. That's easy. It's a different conversation entirely when someone says something like I said, food 3, and you're like, okay, berry and nut makes sense, but what's the third food? I don't see any clear thing. And now you're stuck in this little mind game of trying to get in your teammate's head, and you could stop guessing at any time, and sometimes that is the safer choice. But that pressure of being in the same, in sync with your teammates, that is frustrating at times, and this might make this a game that's not for you. And past that, well, there's no past that. I think that's all the things I can think of someone else not liking. But as far as final thoughts on Codenames itself, before we get into the other expansions and iterations upon them, for me, Codenames is a 5 out of 5 game. And that's going to be true for Codenames and Codenames Duet. Slightly less so for Pictures, but we'll talk about that soon. I think Pictures is a drop less for me. But the overall game system is just an incredibly clever system that rewards strategic play, gives you a fun time. It can accommodate 4 people, and it can also accommodate, well, I mean, I think the box officially says 2 to 8, or is it 4 to 8? I think Codenames Duet is the 2 version. I'm not sure. I think there are variants for playing these. Codenames and Codenames Duet. Codenames and Codenames Pictures has variants for playing with fewer players, but Codenames is, in my opinion, a 4 to 8 player game. You can play it with less, I don't think it's ideal, and you can play it with more, and I don't think it works either. I think once you get to a certain size, it's going to be better party games that fit larger crowds. But at 4 to 8 players, it gives you a consistently good time for a good group of people. You can pack a bunch of cards. They have these little small promo packs for Codenames that are like little promo, like travel size Codenames, and you can genuinely use those. You can pack a bunch of cards into a little Ziploc bag, and you'll have Codenames on the go. It is easy to condense and travel and utilize. It's just a good game. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I guess that's what I'd say. A 5 out of 5 for me. Phenomenal game. I think it's one of the best party games ever created. As far as Codenames Duet and Codenames Pictures, I'll start with Codenames Pictures because I think that's a little easier to jump straight into as far as understanding what Codenames Pictures does, how it operates. But effectively, you're going to have the same basic system at play. The only difference is you're substituting in pictures. So to that end, on this grid over here, you're going to have a slight difference. And again, you could use these over here. You could use this clue card, but they do give you instead a different clue card, a 4x5 instead of a 5x5. And then instead of these cards, although I should probably... You know, I'm not going to overly do this over here because these are going to be useful for Codenames Duet over here. But over here, you're going to be faced with these cards over here. We basically have a bunch of cards that overlay the cards, not overlay, that go on the table, creating a 4x5 grid of pictures. I'm not going to go through the whole table over here, but you can get the general sense as far as you lay out these pictures on the table, and instead of trying to connect, well, you know, words, you're trying to connect pictures. So now you're looking at this grid over here, and as the red player, you're trying to connect these two things. And how do you connect them? Because, sure, there's about a butterfly here, which is very nature. There's this thing, which is very nature, but there's also this blue card, and that has also that little flower, which is very nature. So how can I connect these two cards over here while also avoiding this, which is the death card, and the other cards? So it's the same basic premise. It utilizes pictures instead of words. They are all bizarre pictures, for whatever it's worth. They try to give you specifically things like, you know, here's a light bulb, but it has a candle in it instead. We have a pine cone, which is really a child. So it's going to give you different pictures that try to give you that same spark of creativity, but just with images. And again, these are going to be double-sided as well. I think Codenames Pictures works well. I personally prefer the looseness of words. I find for whatever reason, words end up being a more open framework of trying to connect different things, versus the pictures I find I get a little bit more locked in into just trying to connect a visual representation as opposed to overall concepts and what things can trail down to. Instead of thinking of the fact that, oh, a nail and a cell and they all correlate these different ways and trying to come up with a creative way, I find Pictures locks you a bit more into what that picture actually shows, which tends to result in a slightly more stale experience. I still enjoy it enough that I own it, but it certainly hits the table far, far less than Codenames. I would say Codenames Pictures might hit the table once a year, versus Codenames hits the table on a regular ongoing basis. As far as Duet, Duet is going to give you a way to play Codenames 2 players that actually works. And you could play it in teams, you could play it at higher player counts as well. For me, I recommend it at 2 players. Once you're going to 4, I'd recommend playing with Codenames. But Duet will use the same 5x5 grid. It has its own deck of cards, although you could use the same cards from Codenames. But it's going to replace the teams, because you're all on the same team this time around. Instead, it's going to replace them with different cards over here, both in terms of the clue cards, but also in terms of the, well, you have all of these cards. Because you're trying to get rid of all of these, and you have a limited number of turns to do so, but players have their card that they're looking at. They have this little grid, which is double-sided because it gives you a puzzle where you can go ahead and place this between two players. I see my side, you see your side, and together we are giving each other clues to try to get towards that grid. There are certain rules at play in Codenames Duet, and the rules effectively are there's 9 green cards on each side, but 3 of our green cards overlap, meaning effectively if I look at the grid, I might be trying to get you to guess spider, but you might also be trying to get me to guess spider. It could be a dual card, 3 of them overlap. There are now 3 death cards, although you still lose if you get a single one of them, and then there are rules around those as well. One of my death cards is one of your death cards, one of my death cards is one of your green cards, and one of my death cards is a neutral. And so that aspect of knowing some degree of rules around what's on my side and trying to collectively, because the 9 plus 9 is 18, but 3 overlap, which means there's 15 of these little green things we're trying to get out, and we're trying to do so in a limited number of turns. The default game is going to be a 9-turn game. Between the two of us, we have 9 turns to get 15 cards, which means you have to average a little less than 2 guesses per turn accurately, which seems easy until you start playing and you realize that you're going to waste a turn here being wrong, possibly get the death card there. It is a challenge. And then past that, there are difficulty modifications to give you a little more or a little less. And there's also this little progression system, which I kind of avoided for a long time, but I find I do enjoy going through this, which just gives you a starting point, Prague over here, which gives you a 9-9 starting point to go through. The 9-9 over there refers to the fact that you have 9 turns, and in each turn, you're allowed to get them wrong as well, meaning when you end a turn, you end a turn either by saying, I am done guessing. That is considered a turn that is a turn, but also didn't have any failures. Versus if you continue to guess and you get it wrong, that's considered to be a turn with failures. So a standard 9-9 game is going to be a turn where you have 9 turns, but you're allowed all of those turns can be failed turns. You never have to stop guessing. Versus you can then choose where to branch out. Maybe I go ahead and branch out to Cairo over here, where I have 9 turns, but I'm only allowed to have been wrong 5 times. Those other 4 turns, I had to stop guessing, which puts a bit more pressure. Or maybe I still want that flexibility, so I travel out to Moscow over here, where I go ahead and get an 8-8 turn, which can then bring me down to Bangkok for a 7-7 turn, down to Singapore, where I have 6 turns to get 15 cards. That's 3 turns apiece to get everything on the table, and that gives you a fun little challenge to go through. I enjoy setting up Codenames Duet, and then just going through that progression, going card after card, challenge to challenge, until eventually I die, because I've never made my way to the end of a track yet. And then I just reset the next time I'm playing. And so Codenames Duet to me, Codenames Pictures, which I talked about briefly over here, I think Codenames Pictures captures the general idea of Codenames, but I just prefer Codenames. Versus Codenames Duet gives you an entirely new way to engage with Codenames, both at a lower player count, while being just as good, I don't want to say better, but just as good as Codenames, just as good of an experience. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a 2-player game, whether to play with your friend, your partner, whoever, your kids, or so whoever it is. I think Codenames Duet is a fantastic game that I highly recommend. And then lastly, there's going to be all the other Codenames offshoots. The Marvel Codenames, the Harry Potter Codenames, all these various other IP Codenames that have certain, genres within a Codenames game on your table, utilizing the same core system, but within other, offshoots. And to those, I'd say, my general opinion of those is if you like them, by all means enjoy them. But my personal 2 cents is I don't find those to be as ideal of a Codenames experience. And the reason I'm telling you that is not to rain in your parade. If you like them, by all means do them. I've played through Harry Potter, I've played through Marvel, I've played through a few of the offshoots. But rather that if your exposure to Codenames has been one of those and you didn't find yourself as enamored with the system, I do recommend giving Codenames Duet or Codenames a try to see if this is a game that might be for you. On the other hand, if you like Codenames or if you like those versions of Codenames, then by all means enjoy them. I'm glad you're getting fun out of them. That is basically my review of Codenames, Codenames Duet, Codenames Pictures, and a note about the offshoots. I think this is an absolutely fantastic game. I do believe they have an app coming out sometime soon that's going to give you a way to play Codenames. They already have a web app that you can utilize to play with other people, but I believe they're putting out a fully integrated app with a ton of features that I'm very much looking forward to when that comes out. It'll also give you a way to play it solo, so if 2 players wasn't reducing the player count enough and you need to get it even further down, then you'll have that option as well. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.